Welcome to the Mental Fitness Podcast in partnership with ElizaChat, where we explore real tools and stories for building mental strength in the modern world.
Yeah, so my experience, my career up to this point has been on the go-to-market side of the business in the world of tech. So, mainly in sales leadership, everything go-to-market, looking at market dynamics and positioning and things of that nature. So I've fell in love with tech very quickly, though, just seeing how these businesses can scale so rapidly in tech is super exciting to me, the scalability there. So I instantly fell in love with tech and the nature of that. So, but yeah, that's my background in tech, is really just been on the go-to-market side. What about you, Dave? What's your background in tech?
Almost 25 years ago, I started my first job out of college at a machine learning startup, which is a subset of AI. And I've been working in AI for 25 years. And that led me to a lot of different things in my career. I spent over 10 years at Google. I taught machine learning classes to other Googlers. I worked on AI models and spent a significant time at Google in the AI space. While there, I studied AI at Stanford University. I studied with Andrew Ng and some other world-renowned professors. And after leaving Google, I've been in a number of startups, many of which were AI-focused. So my background has been in software development and product management in the AI space. Now, what about mental health, Luke?
Yeah, my career hasn't been in mental health, but I've, been closely connected to it. My dad is a licensed therapist, so from an early age, I was exposed to his world, right? Listening to how he thought about things, how he kept learning, how his views evolved over time. That really gave me an appreciation for the field, even though, I obviously pursued a different professional direction. But the most profound connection for me is a personal one. In 2016, I lost my older brother, Cody, to suicide. He was my hero in so many ways, someone with a massive heart who really did inspire me. And that loss was devastating. I mean, even 9 years later, it's something my family and I are still navigating. And it changed me. It gave me a deeper empathy and, commitment to treat people with kindness, because you really do never know the battle someone might be carrying, even if they look fine on the outside. So, yeah, while I don't come from a clinical background, my personal experiences have made me care deeply about this space. And that's why I'm so committed to the work we're doing, both at ElizaChat and on this podcast.
Yeah, similar. I haven't worked specifically in mental health, but, everyone at some point in their life, I think, encounters this. And I also had a close family member attempt suicide and fortunately not succeed, but that shook our whole family. And that, I couldn't help but feel feelings of guilt, like I hadn't been there, and that I, wondered what I could do better. And then a number of years later, a very close family friend in this last year took his life, and that shook our family to the core. And I think what surprised me the most was, in hindsight, I see the symptoms were there, but I didn't recognize it. And I just think, geez, at this point, I was already working in the mental health space, and I'm like, how did I miss this? What could I have done different? How could I have provided more support and more help? And so there's this deep passion to take all that I've learned in my career in tech and apply it to what I think is the most important problem facing humanity today. And that's the mental health crisis in this country and throughout the world. And how can we get help into as many people's hands as possible? I've had my own personal struggles at various times, and being what's prototypical of a middle-aged man, and that is I've white-knuckled it, and I've gotten through it without talking to many people about it, and that's been hard. And I know better now. And I would, if there were a couple of periods I would have handled in my own life, I would have handled differently with what I know now. But I did what I did, and now it's like, how do we destigmatize? How do we get better access to resources to more people? And you mentioned in your tech background, Luke, you mentioned what attracted you to tech was the ability for businesses to scale so rapidly. And the massive problem we have with mental health is today it's predominantly a human bottleneck problem, meaning we're addressing it with therapists and psychologists, and we don't have enough of them, and it's not even close, and the problem's getting worse. And so applying tech and our background in tech and our expertise to solving the most important problem that there is, I believe, there's just a tremendous opportunity to actually solve the problem, to actually at scale provide help and support to millions and billions of people. So why did we decide to do ElizaChat?
Yeah, we were working together at a conversational AI company. The AI product was SMS texting via conversational AI. You know, you can get a little bit more into the tech side of it, but we would engage with organizations that get inbound requests, essentially, and leads, and we'd engage those leads via conversational AI, via SMS. One of those companies was one of the largest addiction centers in America, where when people are struggling with addiction, they go and they go into recovery there, right? So that was, we just thought it was another client. We knew the power of the AI. We all were super passionate about it. It was very human-like conversation via SMS. But with this client in particular, our eyes started to open to the impact that conversational AI can have in terms of this realm of mental health. In this light, it was recovery and addiction and things of that nature. But what happened was what we would do is we'd create these agents, right? These AI agents for these different companies. In this case, her name was Christina. So Christina would reach out to people that are coming to the website. And most people, by the way, would reach out via text. They don't want to call, right? There's a lot of, maybe that's due to stigma or other reasons, but they just wanted to text and start the conversation. So at least they were willing to do that and engage. And Christina would text back and forth, empathize with them. Sometimes this would happen for days, sometimes weeks, and in a few instances, even months, where she just continually engage and try to guide them into recovery, into these recovery centers, right? But eventually what would happen is the call center that we worked with at this addiction recovery center said, hey, people keep coming to us and saying, hey, where's people that come in for recovery say, hey, where's Christina? She saved my life. That caused a slight problem because Christina was AI, right? And she actually didn't work there, as a human at least. So, but what opened our eyes was, holy cow, like this is an opportunity to bring human-like empathy and kind of connection into areas that matter, right? In the areas of mental health. So
yeah, the holy cow moment was incredible. It was like, wait a minute, we're not just building a texting service that's making money. We're actually helping change and in some cases save lives. And it was a good enough experience that people wanted to meet this person. And we've figured out with AI ethics, this was in the early days, and we've figured out that you disclose when you're talking to an AI. But I think that was just such a powerful moment. I think everyone in the company was so proud of what we were doing because we were doing good. And I think that's where the seed was planted for us. One, we saw that we could build human-like AI. Two, we saw that we could make a difference in just how good you feel when you apply your expertise to solving a real-world human problem. And then when we got started, we thought we'd start an addiction recovery.
Well, and up to this point, all of our careers have been in marketing technology, specifically, right?
Yeah, I spent 11 years at Google making ads more effective.
Right. And my whole time was in MarTech, B2B, helping people acquire more customers through marketing technology, right? So just because of the nature of our career, we hadn't even thought about really doing something else in tech until this moment, right?
Yeah, it was a light bulb moment. And I think you hinted at this, but there's some of the other insights was that people preferred text over talk.
Right. And
I think that speaks to a lot of the stigmatization and shame associated with some mental health challenges. In that specific case was addiction recovery, but it's the same outside of the space of addictions with anxiety, depression, other areas. And there's this powerful, inviting opening when you can anonymously text an AI that's going to pass no judgment on you. And when you can trust it from a privacy standpoint, and when you can trust it that it's clinically trained and it's intelligent and it's going to do the right thing, but that there's no human being that will ever read this message, that's so powerful in terms of being able to open up and be truly authentic with yourself and explore an area that you maybe haven't even been comfortable fully admitting to yourself, let alone another human being. And long term, human connection is so essential in the mental wellness journey. And this is not ever intended to replace the human connection or the human therapist. But it can be a powerful gateway to open up discussion, to start, and for people who are curious to figure out and to explore in a very, very safe environment.
Yeah. Well, I mean, for better or worse, you're seeing this with, these LLMs and their look at ChatGPT, right? Just a few months ago, Harvard Business Review came out and said, therapy companionship is now the number one use case for generative AI, right? So just to your point of AI does provide this space where you can be vulnerable, right, without anyone seeing what you're going to say, and people are opening up at an incredible rate. You talk to anyone, right? Hey, have you ever spoken to ChatGPT about something like this? Absolutely. I bet 8 out of 10 people you talk to have.
I was just talking this last week to someone that we work with, that we contract with, and she was telling me she uses ChatGPT all the time, as do all her friends, to discuss their problems. It's the free therapist. It's not designed and trained and in this way. It does a decent job of, answering basic questions, but it's not really designed to do this. And that can cause some other problems. But what it speaks to is this desire that we all have to learn more about our mental wellness, but we don't necessarily want to ask our friends or our loved ones, or not that we're against therapy, but just the effort that takes to find a therapist, to either pay for it or to arrange insurance to pay for it, to take time off work. There's a lot of barriers before someone's sitting in the chair of a therapist in their office. There's a lot that has to happen before one gets there. And as a result, many people never get there, or they get there much later than they should. And so anything we can do to increase accessibility, both from a cost standpoint, a geographic standpoint, a stigmatization standpoint, all of those things have an incredible opportunity here. So I don't know that we want to go too deep in that because this isn't necessarily focused on that. But that's why we started ElizaChat. And that's like, well, okay, so there's these two guys that have this AI mental health company. Why start a podcast? Why the mental fitness podcast? What does that have to do with AI mental health support?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I think, like I said earlier, everyone's on such an individual mental wellness journey in their life. And there's so many layers to mental health. So it's not necessarily a topic you can cover in an episode or a YouTube video or a blog post or something, right? There's so many layers, there's so many angles, there's so many different topics you can get into. So that's why we started the Mental Fitness Podcast, to bring on clinical experts, PhDs, behavioral experts in specific areas like sleep, for instance, right? We can walk people through that and say, hey, sleep is a massive and important part of being mentally fit.
Right. Yeah, we're doing all this work. We're having all these conversations with experts. We're learning all these important lessons. And a lot of the things we're learning are going to make their way into the product, but not everything. So we want to share these learnings with everyone because the ultimate goal of what we're doing, we're mission driven. It's to help people become mentally fit. It's to help increase the overall wellness in our society. And so we have an AI product for that, but we also have all of these learnings. And as you mentioned, these topics are very nuanced and some of them just take a lot of time. You can't just create a blog post or a web page about it. You need the time to take on a single topic with a world-class expert. Let's spend 30, 40 minutes or an hour deep diving into the topic of how sleep can contribute to mental wellness, how physical exercise or nutrition can contribute to mental wellness, or the things that we can do to reduce anxious situations or to address depressive states and all of these other areas. We're going to deep dive heavy into each of these. And we want to bring those key learnings as much as we can to as many people as possible.
And one of the fun parts of doing this podcast, I guess for me personally, and I think you as well, Dave, is I'm naturally a very curious person. I mean, when I first went to school, I was studying psychology was my degree. I'm always fascinated about why people do the things they do and how things work, right? And behaviors and things of that nature. So this is fun when we, like you said, we're learning all these things from these clinicians and behavioral experts for our company. But then when we go prepare for an episode on a certain topic, the deep research we do before that is fun and it's fascinating, right?
Yeah.
So for the curious listeners out there, when we do deep dives, it's pretty fun.
And just going back to our own personal experiences, what's interesting to me is that as co-founders, we had all worked together at multiple companies before. And one of our co-founders I worked with in my first job 25 years ago. And I thought that I knew my co-founders pretty well. And then when we decided to start on this journey of applying our tech expertise in the space of AI, we started opening up with each other about our own mental health experiences and journeys, whether it's our own personal experiences or those of loved ones. And it was like, wow, now I feel like I really know my co-founders.
Right.
And there's a lot of interesting things to unpack in that. But I mean, one, I realized this touches all of us. I mean, we've all had very profound experiences in this space with ourselves and with loved ones. And we bring because of that, we bring a lot of passion to it. And that's what was super interesting was everyone was so on board with what we wanted to do as a business. And then over those first few months, as we shared with each other, it became apparent why, right? I mean, I didn't know that you grew up in the home of a therapist and that you were even in the early, we go back how much we've improved as a society on talking about mental health and destigmatizing a lot of it. But you go back 20 years when there was a lot more stigmatization and a lot less public conversation on the topic. And you were having these conversations with your dad on a regular basis. And so you've been familiar with this topic and engaging with it in a way for many, many years, more than most people. And then, we could just go around, each of us have our own personal stories and we're just a small subsample of society, but I don't think it's an anomaly. I think it's just representative that everyone, either with themselves or with a close friend or loved one in one way or another, has been profoundly impacted by mental health in some way or another.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. With there's a lot of awareness. There's different types of, we have AI, right? Accessibility, things of that nature. In that, if looking at things in that lens, Dave, what do you think is, what conversation is missing at the intersection of mental health and AI? I think there's also some controversy there.
Yeah.
Right? And, some people have good takes and some people have bad takes, but what's your thoughts? What conversation is missing at the intersection of mental health and AI?
Well, it's interesting how fast it's changing. When we started a year and a half ago, it seemed that most people I told what we were doing, there was like almost this immediate concern. I think there's something natural in all of us that we're like, wait a minute, isn't technology part of the problem? Or wait a minute, isn't human connection just an essential element in the solution? And it was either one of those two things or both of those things just almost creates this like spidey sense of when you first hear about AI mental health, you think, bad idea. But then when, if you just think about it and you think of ways that tech has made lives better and many ways that tech has made life more challenging, but you think done in the right way, it has so much potential. But then more importantly, when you look at the scope of the problem, there is no other way we can solve this. In that scale, we're talking billions of people. And the current model of one-on-one therapy sessions, just do the math. How many hours in a week, how many clients could a therapist or a psychologist possibly see? What's the max client load? Then just do the math on the number of people struggling with mental health, and you come up with a number of needed mental health professionals that's 10, 100, 1,000x the current level. There's no way we will solve this with the current model. And so I think that it's people have good reason to have reservations, but that doesn't mean we just put our head in the sand, which is the way some people respond. It's more like, okay, I have reservations. Let's make sure that we're thoughtful about how we do this and address this. And let's make sure that we do it in a way that we don't lose the essence of human connection.
Right. And
we don't lose a understanding of how profoundly technology has negatively impacted us, our young people above all else. And what can we learn from that so that we can now change the way we've engaged with technology and use it in a way that can just completely reverse the trend on mental health that we've been experiencing over the last 20, 30 years.
Yeah, that's so being super thoughtful about what you're architecting to solve this problem, right? Another missing piece of the conversation, I believe, is another thing when we first started our company is people are like, oh, so you're looking to replace therapists, right? Oh, so you're doing AI therapy, right? Which there are companies out there that are, right? But where I think a massive missing piece of this intersection of mental health and AI, where people aren't thinking about, is not in reactive care, where people are already in a situation where they need to sit down with a therapist, but in proactive care. I think that's potentially one of the most powerful ways to use AI in mental health and mental wellness is in proactive care, helping people strengthen their foundations, regulate their emotions, get fit, get more, nutrition-wise, sleep, just strengthening the foundation of their life. So when these situations do come up, like high-stress environments in work or something with your spouse or your partner, or you lose a loved one, or you're a little more prepared to handle those scenarios. You're a little more able to regulate your emotions and think more clearly, right? Whereas today society is addicted to dopamine, and you're going for those. And that's how we're using tech today, right?
Yeah, and it's also worth noting that while this podcast is sponsored by ElizaChat, and that's our background, and that's what we're spending a lot of time on, this podcast is not about AI mental health support. This podcast is centered around mental fitness. The things that we'll be talking about, we may occasionally or even rarely talk specifically about AI tools in mental health, but most likely, most of the episodes will not be centered on that. This podcast is around mental fitness. Things like you mentioned, nutrition. How does that affect us? What are the things that positively and negatively affect our well-being from a nutrition standpoint? Physical exercise, sleep, for healthy connections with friends, family members, unhealthy connections with friends, family members. The way we think about how we handle work stress, how we handle family stress, even just destigmatizing some topics by having guests who've gone through a lot of experiences and then the things that they did to pull themselves out of it. That's the essence of what this podcast is about. Those are the types of guests that we'll be having on. You could have zero interest in the AI mental wellness space and still benefit tremendously from this podcast, because there'll be episodes dedicated to each of those topics, or multiple episodes dedicated to each of those topics, where we'll deep dive into the nuances and the idiosyncrasies of how the things that we eat affect how we feel.
Yeah.
Or how the patterns that we have in our workday, and how those some can contribute to increased or decreased anxiety. The way we even, configure things in our home, or whatever the topic be, they're not necessarily tech related. There may be, like I said, occasional topics where we'll dive into the area of tech, but most of them will not be.
No, you're right. The actionable takeaways we want to deliver on this platform, they're only related to AI and mental health, in that those are the learnings, just as you said, with these experts we work with, we're learning these fantastic things that we can take action and apply in our lives. So that's the other relation, is these things we're learning we want to deliver on this platform of a podcast.
Yeah, another way to think about it is AI is one form of delivery and a podcast is another form of delivery.
Yeah.
AI doesn't improve mental wellness. Exercising, eating right, sleeping, having meaningful relationships, being gracious with ourselves, learning how to deal with anxiety. That's what makes us well. One way to help deliver those learnings is through an AI system. Another way to help deliver those learnings is through the conversations we'll have on this podcast.
Right.
So they're not competing in any way. They're just two different mediums to deliver hopefully the same messages to help people improve their lives.
Yeah. What does Dave like to do for fun?
One thing that I like to do, I like to exercise a lot. I don't do it as much as I would like, but I always feel better when I exercise, not just physically, but I feel better about myself. Fitness is something I enjoy. Being active is something I enjoy. I'm a very people-centric person. I have a large family. I have lots of children. Life is best when I'm doing something physically active with my kids, because it kind of brings two of the most meaningful things in my life together. I mean, number one is my family. Anytime I'm doing something meaningful with them, I'm happy.
Mm-hmm.
But the types of things I like to do is if I'm playing football or basketball with my boys, or I'm swimming, or I'm on a hike or a camping trip, if I'm doing something like that with my family or my friends, that's when I'm most happy. What about you, Luke? What are the types of things you like to do?
Yeah, you are certainly more people centric than me. I'm naturally more introverted for sure. We do share some of those similar things. I mean, people ask what wakes you up, what inspires you, what gives you passion. 100% the answer is my children, right? So just my kids. So we do share that. Mine are a little younger, so I look forward to the day when I could do more physical activity that's like play football or go to the beach like you do. But I guess I can wrestle with my kids now. But and then fitness as well. I love and all things sports. I love anything where I can be athletic or any sport whatsoever. Pick up baseball, softball. I played baseball in high school. I love all sports. So I would say sports, fitness, and my family.
Yeah, we have similar interests. Maybe I'd want to do it with a larger group, but
Yeah.
if you listen to this podcast on a regular basis and apply the things that we discuss, you can improve your overall mental fitness. That's what this is designed to do. We're going to take, if you think of physical fitness, it would be like, okay, today we're talking about bicep curls and ways to increase the strength of your bicep muscle. Here's some exercises for that. Here's some stretches. Mm-hmm. Here's a way to increase that muscle. And so this podcast is about identifying those different mental fitness muscles. We've talked about some of them: sleep, nutrition, exercise, thought patterns, cognitive distortions, things that we do to magnify anxiety, things that we do to magnify depression, things that we do to hurt our human connections, maybe even just a lack of understanding of how important human connections are, helping raise awareness of different topics. Basically, we're going to dive into all the areas of the body, to use that metaphor, but we're diving into the mental wellness muscles, and we're giving fitness tips. So over time, you listen to this podcast, you're going to learn what you need to do to improve your overall wellness.
Yes. What's one mindset shift that's impacted your life?
I can think of a couple. One very recently was one of the experts that we've interviewed for this podcast helped me think differently about an important aspect of mental wellness. And I'll save the details of that for that episode, but basically what it was sometimes if we worry or try too hard to solve an element of our mental wellness, we can actually be counterproductive. In other words, we should live our lives in the patterns that promote mental wellness and health, and then trust that as we do that over time, our minds and our bodies will take care of itself. So that was a recent one that was interesting. But I think a big one that helped me many years ago was, and there's a practice of gratitude journaling that's pretty common. Mm-hmm. A lot of therapists use it in their treatments, but focusing on the things that we are grateful for, that we genuinely love and have, can just reset our whole disposition. When we're focused on a problem, what you focus on is magnified. And if you focus on problems, you have bigger problems. When you focus on the things that you have in your life, those are magnified in your own perception. And so gratitude journaling is this really great process that takes the things that are really meaningful to you that you're grateful for, and magnifies them in your mind. It's not about ignoring problems. That would be silly to say the solution to being happy is just focus on the things that are good and ignore the things that are bad. That's not it. But the counter to that is absolutely true. When you focus on the bad and ignore the good, then you are creating a problematic distortion of reality, right? You can have a lot of things going on in your life, but like, man, your boss at work is just driving you nuts. And if that's what you focus on in your thought patterns, in your communication with others, then all of a sudden your life seems pretty crappy, but you might have so many other things going on in your life that are good. And it doesn't mean you don't have to deal with that issue with your boss. Someday you're going to have a difficult conversation or move on. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean you don't deal with the problem, but you can sometimes reset yourself and realize, okay, here's a part of my life that's challenging right now, but it's only a part of my life.
Right.
What about you? What's a thought pattern, either a change in thought or a cognitive distortion or something that you've changed in the way that you think?
Yeah. I would say probably if I could point to like one single thing that, has reach in all aspects of my life, it's having a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. So, fixed mindset, meaning your abilities are innate and unchangeable. No matter how much effort you put in, you're not going to get better at something, right? Whereas a growth mindset is the exact opposite. Through effort and perseverance, no matter how good you are at that thing in that moment, you can get better, always. So that's something I've believed for a long time, and I try to always remind myself of, in this very moment, episode 1 of the Mental Fitness Podcast. I'm a very junior and not a great podcaster, but tune into episode 50, and hopefully through effort and perseverance and learnings, I've improved, right? So it's just that controlling with what you can control as well. There's so many things that life throws at you can't control, and kind of just like what you said, if you focus on the wrong thing, just focus on what you can control. It's so much simpler to live life that way, right?
It's huge.
It's just...
Well, first, a comment on growth mindset. I love that about you, Luke. And there's been so many times when in our journey so far, and as co-founders, we've hit some bump in the road, and it like never bothers you. I mean, it's just like, you're just like, okay, great. This is how we're going to get past this. And I love that mindset. That there's no problem. I feel like there's ever been a problem we've encountered where your response isn't something like, as we learn how to overcome this, or once we get past this, or, when we're looking back on this moment, it's going to be a great memory or something like that. And I'm always like, I love it. That's been super encouraging for me. The second thing you talked about is so true. I was talking about gratitude journaling, and it's related to what you just said, and that's focusing on the things you can control and not the things you can't control. In my non-trained psychology understanding, anxiety, I don't know if it's caused by or magnified by, but it's highly correlated. Anxiety is magnified when our focus, or maybe in some cases created, when we're focused on things that impact our lives that we have no control over. Mm. That's part of what anxiety is. Right. And the best solution, the best counter to that is when, and from what I'm understanding from the therapists and psychologists we've been working with, one of the best treatments for anxiety is helping people understand the things they can control and do. Mm-hmm. And when you make progress in something that's in your control, your anxiety decreases. It's just simple. When we focus on things out of our control, that's just so common sense, right? Wow, this is impacting me. There's nothing I can do about it. It's really bad. I can't do anything about it. It's really bad. That's what anxiety is. But if you're like, this is impacting me, here's one thing I can do to prepare for it or to minimize its impact or whatever it is, and then you go do that, there's just something about action that makes you feel like you're progressing. And so I love that. The wisdom to distinguish those two, the things that we can do something about and the things that we can't do something about, and we focus on where we can act and not on things out of our control.
Yeah, those are great thoughts.